Welcome to our first panel discussion. On the high table, we have Ms. Mahnaz Afkhami, President of Women Learning Partnership, Executive Director of Foundation for Iranian Studies, and former Minister of Women Affairs of Iran. Next is Ms. Aicha Diallo, who've already made a presentation here, Vice President NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee Chair of Forum for African Women Educationalists, FAWE, and former Minister of Education of Guinea. And then we have Ms. Hassina Sherjan, Founder and CEO of Aid Afghanistan for Education. And then we have Ms. Mervi Jansson, Director, Omnia Education Partnerships here in Finland. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your panel. I think what Madam Diallo have been talking about was quite interesting. And before we go into those details, could we have a brief background information about the specific work that you do with your various organizations so that the audience will have an idea of who are talking to us?
Okay. Now, let me maybe start with the Liaison Committee in UNESCO. We are 9 members representing the whole world, regions of the world. And we have been elected in 2012 for 2 years. And we will be organizing forums and international days. One forum will be women and youth that will be working in the field of water for all, which is going to be held in Africa. The first one, in fact, was Education for All, which was held in Paris. Then you have the women fighting against poverty. It's going to be held in Asia. And youth and the patrimoine, which is going to be held in Europe. Now, the international days, you have the culture of peace, the International Day for the Culture of Peace in Paris, Literacy for All, International Day for the Elimination of Poverty, International Day for Human Rights, and International Day for Migrants. Now, for FAWE, we are a Pan-African organization, female organization, which covers the whole Africa, because even in Egypt we are present. We have 33 chapters, and we deal with promoting girls' education from early childhood to higher education. We started our organization in 1992, so we are not young anymore, but the road is very long to go.
Thank you very
much. Stop there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Madam Chair, if you want to talk about your work.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the organizers of this conference, and thank you for having me here. It's great to be here. Before I forget, I really want to know how many people and how many days we can stop using lipstick so we can educate the whole population.
Yeah. Great.
How many? Have a clap for that? So we can start. Aid Afghanistan for Education started in 1996. We are now working inside Afghanistan since 2003. Back in 96, we started working with some refugee camps in Pakistan. We provide education for marginalized Afghans who don't have access to formal education now or didn't have access to education during the years of war. Right now in Afghanistan, if you're 10 years old and you have not had access to education, you have no option but to either sell potatoes on the streets or join the insurgents, because the formal education does not offer anything for those who are above 10 years of age. We have millions of people. We have 80% illiteracy in Afghanistan. So in a country that you have 80% illiteracy and money has replaced all values, and democracy has not been a grassroots process, so the country is bound to fail and fall in the hands of insurgents. Unless we educate the whole population, we cannot just focus on children. The pressing issue right now is, of course, funding, because USAID funded our program since 2007. However, they stopped the funding last March, so we have not paid salaries of 256 teachers. We have 3,000 female students in 9 provinces, and we haven't paid salaries of 256 teachers for the past 10 months. In fact, 2 weeks ago yesterday, I was detained at the Women's Detention Center for not paying salaries of the teachers. Not paying salaries of the teachers is not a crime. However, maybe it is to some people. They planned to keep me there for 3 days, but they failed. I was there for 24 hours. And now, who is responsible? Somebody has to answer that whether educating 3,000 female students is a crime, or somebody is responsible when donors stop funding, and why donors stop funding abruptly without any exit plan, or if we did have a strategic plan, but they didn't continue. So is it the government that's responsible? Because there's a huge program. We have 256 teachers and 3,000 female students. So this is not a program to shut down. Somebody has to be responsible when donors stop funding. Billions of dollars coming from the international community to the Ministry of Education. Is the ministry responsible? If not, who is responsible? Should the private sector take the responsibility to rescue the people, because otherwise we will have to shut down the program.
Thank you. I believe the audience will have a lot of questions to ask this wonderful panel. We will have time for that to be done. But before that, Mervi, can we hear a little bit?
Yes, thank you. Yes, my name is Mervi. I'm the Director of Education Partnerships in a large organization called Omnia. Omnia is the Joint Authority of Education in the Espoo region, quite a mouthful, which means that it's a non-profit organization owned by 3 municipalities, Espoo, Kirkkonummi, and Kauniainen. And what we do, a number of things. First of all, we offer vocational education and training to over 10,000 students in the greater Helsinki area. Our students are between the age of 16 to 60 years old, so really you can say that we're all about lifelong learning. And we're a UNIVOC member. We do a number of international things. We have projects ongoing at the moment in Kosovo and in Egypt to help, again, in the capacity building in the education sectors of those countries. We're very proud to be the winners of the 2013 Quality Award here in Finland, which is a national education award, and the award for innovation in learning. So very briefly, that's what we do, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later on.
Yeah, thank you. Can we hear?
I'm Mahnaz Afkhami. I don't know if you hear me. Do you? Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. How about now? Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. I'm Mahnaz Afkhami, President of Women's Learning Partnership. We are a partnership of 20 organizations on 3 continents, and the partnership of us is of autonomous, independent grassroots organizations who also institute our board, programmatic board. So they meet once a year with the overview board, which is a smaller, more traditional organization, and we develop our plans for each year. The work that we do is based on learning on the ground at the grassroots how to interact in a democratic, participatory, horizontal manner. A leadership formula that we think is necessary for people to approach the relationships that structure human interaction. And we produce curriculum together with the partners on that, present cases of people in dialogue, deciding, making decisions that concern their lives. These prototypes get adapted, tested and adapted at the national level and into the languages and cultural context that is appropriate for each country. The partnership replicates these trainings through each partner
expanding to other organizations at the national level, and some partners have also members in other countries. They act as hubs. Morocco, for instance, acts as a hub for Tunisia and Algeria and Liberia, and Libya, I'm sorry. And our partner in Nigeria acts as a hub for Africa, and so forth. So what we're trying to do in a very difficult time of transition, especially in the MENA region, but wider than MENA, or it also the situation exists in Latin America and Africa as well. We're trying to get women ready as agents for change, as citizen activists, so that they can participate in the political process, both as voters and people who choose their leaders, and also as leaders themselves, which we think is a learning process, which is a very important component of the formal education that people are receiving, or hopefully we would like to expand to everyone receiving across the world, the additional lifelong learning that makes people responsible and participants, actors in the decisions that concern their lives.
Yeah, thank you very much. Ms. Diallo, I'll come back to you. You know, when you were making the presentation, you did mention, some staggering statistics, especially, some staggering statistics. I mean, some numbers on children who are out of school. For example, you mentioned like 22% of African children are actually out of school. And, you did also mention that there was no clear, actually, indicators to measure progress, in setting out the MDGs agenda in these areas. Why were such very important issues not have clear-cut indicators?
This is the big issue. Why in 2000, the whole world, which met in Dakar, did not think about setting these targets? You see, it's gaps. It's human to have gaps. That's why this time we are saying, post-2015, we must have these targets, clear indicators, so that we will be able to track the progress. So in fact, it is in the early childhood care education, youth, and the third one is, I think these are the two, and youth and early childhood. There was no target at all. So we have to make sure that this time there will be clear targets. In fact, what we are looking for, in fact, it is NGOs which is fighting for that. It's to have, for post-2015, an inclusive education for all goal. Okay? It has to be equity, equality, and it has to be the word is not coming. Right-based. It has to be right-based. With clear targets for each, clear indicators for each, so that not a single one, boys or girls, women or men, will be left out. We need to have a sustainable future for all. And for that to happen, education for all throughout life has to be really implemented.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sherjan, I think you did hear her, in her presentation mention, the importance of first language literacy. And you just said about 80% of Afghanistan, are actually illiterate. Is there a governmental policy, or is there anything happening with respect to first language literacy? Because first language literacy, research has shown is very crucial in developing the memory, especially for young people. Is there how is the educational structure and systems in Afghanistan currently like?
Well, it's difficult to say what the whole structure. The structure is very old, I have to say. That the last 12 years, no reform of the whole education system happened. And unless that happens, yes, we may have some millions of kids coming to school, but where is the quality? If you really take a 12th grade graduate today and ask her to write a paragraph, she can't write 3 sentences. So, but that is it's not her fault, of course, because the education system has not been reformed. We're still in the road system. You have to memorize everything. And how can you learn? Learning is not taking place. It should be about quality and learning and thinking. We have to produce thinkers. We shouldn't produce robots. Right now we're producing thousands and thousands of robots every year. So...
and just to chip in, what's that the NGOs been doing? Is there an advocacy going on in the country to promote like
there are thousands of NGOs in Afghanistan. There are billions of dollars spent. We need an international team to really go and look at what has happened to that money and where is the result.
So there's no transparency?
You know that the international community spends most money on anti-corruption in Afghanistan right now. And that's at all levels. It's not only in the government. It's at all levels. So sadly, yes, it's a reality that we're faced with right now, and something has to happen. Because we can't go on like this. We cannot become part of the international family as a country where we have a lot of resources. This country can become one of the richest countries in the whole region, but not the way it's going right now. There are literacy programs. Of course, we have a whole other department for literacy only, but it's not enough. I think we can't focus on just having people read or write their name or their sign or something. We really need to educate the population.
Yeah. Ms. Jansson, your outfit did was quality management in education, etc. You know, with all the issues that have been raised, you know, what do you think are the fundamental issues at stake here? And what has been some of your outfit interventions in these areas?
Well, I think for one thing, relevancy in education is often missing. We're still really educating people to get a piece of paper. What about the real world skills? What about what's out there? What is needed? So there really should be much more dialogue between the world of education and then again the world of work. And there are different models and different ways to bridge that. Now, very often education is in a silo. And we close the doors and the kids come into the schools or universities or vocational schools and the world of work stays out there. One thing that we did in Omnia about 3 years ago when we were designing our new campus, we decided that we would blend the world of work and the world of education. So as the first education institute, vocational institute in Finland, we decided that we would have the world of work on our campus. So we've actually now welcomed over 100 micro companies, 1 to 2 people companies, startups who are from the vocational world themselves who wanted to start their own company. And they're working together with our students and with our staff, and it's a win-win basis. Everybody is learning something. So everybody becomes a learner and a teacher. And that's just one way to do it. There are many ways to do it. But overall, I think there is a lack of dialogue, and I definitely hope and would like to see NGOs participate in that dialogue to bring the richness of the real world into education, because that is sorely lacking in many cases. And still, we are now educating people even today to go and work for somebody, not to create a job for themselves. And I think that's definitely one of the big problems in education at the moment. So much more entrepreneurship, taking initiative, being active, and being an advocate of your own life. You have to create your own career. It's not going to come and drop down from the sky for you.
Yeah. You know, Ms. Afkhami, you know, Ms. Jansson just mentioned one critical role of NGOs in this area. What in your experience, I mean, you have vast experience in this, in working with various things. What's in your view are some of the ways that NGOs could really engage tangibly to kind of make this work?
Yeah, actually, very important points brought out here, and it's exactly the essence of our partnership. That is, one, as Hassina mentioned, that the NGOs need to learn how to be transparent, how to have capacity to act efficiently, how they need to be fair among themselves with their own staff and their own constituency. So a big part of our work is NGO capacity building. And the thing that we have discovered also is that it's very important for the capacity building to happen peer-to-peer, south-south, that you can't have someone from a different context come and help you either do strategic planning or capacity building. So we have our partners in Jordan, for instance, do strategic planning and capacity building for Egypt, for Palestine, and vice versa, learning from each other and building each other's capacities. So that's one aspect of it. The other is that the essential component of our learning, and we call ourselves a learning institution, that is not only individually we learn how to adapt, how to make use of the possibilities and the environment, how to create initiatives, how to create a message that resonates with others and they will join you to mobilize for action. So not only that, but also a learning organization in the sense of being available to the information that comes from the environment so that you can change with the environment, especially in the places where we live. In a matter of 2 months, several countries are exploding all over the place. So you have to be ready to change your methodology, your topics to the changing conditions. Response should match the circumstances. So that is essentially what we are trying to do, to do learning on the basis of dialogue, exchange, interaction, and a feeling of mutual respect so that people feel free to innovate, that they don't have to wait for someone to tell them what, but that they do have the agency to innovate, to change.
I really like the point on the South-South cooperation because that is really lacking most of the time. We think that, somebody from the West must kind of give some sort of capacity building and those kind of things. But Ms. Diallo, I have to come back to you. You did also mention the importance of research. You seem to know the issues already. Why do we have to spend a lot of money on research again?
You see, you have some, as I said, hidden challenges which the usual research do not show. I gave you an example. We were wondering why girls at the age of 14 were dropping out in sub-Saharan Africa. It's through research that we found out that when they had their menstruation, they did not know how to deal with it at school. They knew how to deal it in the house, but this is not the way. You cannot go to, because most of the time they used to wear some special, un petit pagne, a special skirt and sit until the 3 days go. Can you just sit and not go to school? You will drop out, of course. And then we found out that it's just that they needed these serviette hygiénique. Oh. Sanitary, voila. Sanitary. They needed these sanitary napkins. Then FAWE started campaigning for that. In each school, we have to have a health place where sanitary napkins will be provided to the girls. So it's research. So it's really a special, specific, focused research that we have to do.
Yeah, and it increases retention.
Yes, then they come. That's what the kind of research I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay. Sherjan, Ms. Sherjan, what is working in Afghanistan in education? What can the world learn? What is actually working? Is there something that is working out there? In the area of education?
Yes.
Is there something that is working?
Working.
Yeah, something
that is... Working, I'm sorry. Is there something that's working? Well, it depends if we're comparing it, because it's easy right now to compare Afghanistan to the Taliban period. I don't want to compare Afghanistan to the Taliban period, but unfortunately the government and also the international community, just to make themselves feel like they've done something, they continue to compare Afghanistan to the Taliban period. Yes, I was in Kabul in '99 for 2 weeks. Comparing it to that period, there's a huge, everything's working. But that's not Afghanistan. There was an Afghanistan before the Taliban period. Afghanistan was not born in 2011, and it's not going to die in 2014 either. So there was a country before that. I grew up in Afghanistan. I went to school. I graduated from high school, and it was a well-run country. Yes, we were not. I mean, not everybody was rich, but not everybody was dying either from poverty. Now, yeah, I mean, that said, I think if you're comparing it to the Taliban period, yes, we have roads now. We have communication companies, some huge communication companies. We have TV stations, hundreds of TV stations, radios, press, all sorts of press, newspapers and press media. We have 9 million kids are coming to school. Girls are not banned from school, or women are not banned from working. However, I feel that the real work, the foundation work, has not been done. It's kind of like building a house, and before building the foundation or even the walls, you buy a lot of beautiful furniture. You know, I mean, the very first storm will destroy the whole thing. And that's what I'm worried about. We have a lot of tall glass buildings, but if you don't help the people to learn to use these buildings, to learn to have a society that's functioning, to be able to develop institutions, to think for yourself, I don't think that we're going to survive.
Ms. Jansson, I think your organization needs to go to Afghanistan.
I think we should partner. No?
Yeah.
I think we should.
But what directs your projects? You know, what makes you decide to go into a particular country? Is it related to funding issues?
Well, funding is, of course, unfortunately, again, one issue. But I think I'd go back to the research. We need to have more information on the real needs, the real situation in the country. I mean, we can't go and say, okay, in Finland we have, wonderful education, let's take it to country X. That's never going to work. So, I mean, honestly, doing analysis, doing the research on what is the situation, what are the real needs, where can we actually come in and build value together? And how can we get the relevancy? Where does that come from? Relevant for whom? And again, unfortunately, with vocational education and training, it's often seen as second-rate education in very many countries. It's underdeveloped. It can be a number of ministries sort of not pooling things together, so it's very fragmented. So just by doing research and doing the groundwork, looking at the policy issues and bringing the partners to the same table to have a joint vision and steps to that vision, I think is one of the important things, which is what we're doing in the countries where we have the capacity building projects. So it's not about building one school, it's about building a model that will support all the schools and all the training. And that's the only way to have sustainable development there.
Yeah, we will come to the audience.
Can I say that there is more to this partnership? Because Finland government, the Embassy of Finland in Afghanistan, supported 5 of our schools to be established in the north in 2007. So this is just a continuation of that partnership.
Okay. So Mr. Afkhami, I want to understand who is supposed to do the research. We are all mentioning research. Who is supposed to do it? Is it the NGOs, or is the government, or who is supposed to do it?
Well, naturally, various groups, and the ones that are very well equipped to do research are people who have specialization in the various areas. Whether it be academics or working with the NGOs or NGOs themselves doing some of the ground work to do this. I think one of the important ways of doing research is engaging in monitoring and evaluation. Because if you set up a really useful system that is both doable at various levels of sophistication of the organizations, that system of monitoring and evaluation tells you a lot about what works, what doesn't work, what is useful, and it has to be based on facts, on numbers, on needs. So I think that's an important piece.
Right, thank you. Just.
You know, you talked about the academia. In Guinea, when I was appointed minister, I found out that the statistics were exaggerated. And I did not know really all the barriers to girls' education. To reconcile the higher education and the basics, I requested that universities should do the research. And it's amazing. They learned a lot. They did come up with, the gaps, but they learned about taking care of the basics, basic education. When they finished, they come and said, oh, Tanti, they always call each other Tanti. Auntie, thank you for having given us this opportunity to learn about our younger people. We didn't know it. You see, when you go through, you forget how you went through. Yeah. But when you go into deep and research, then you find out.
And I think it's a general problem in Africa. Well, universities are not supposed to conduct research.
Yeah, and they have to.
Important.
It's important.
Very important point there. That is, sometimes in many countries, the academics in various fields are in some universe of their own, and they don't have a connection with real life possibilities. So any kind of connection between academia and people on the ground is very helpful. We try to do this in our work. We try to always invite academics to interact with the people who are actually on the ground. I think it's very important.
Everybody else?
No, it's just that they haven't learned. They haven't learned. They don't have access. You see, we haven't gone out to get them either. They have to work with numbers, and they keep quoting each other themselves. When they write instead of quoting who's on the ground.
Yeah, but it exists. They know that it exists. So why do we have to go after them? They should come after us.
No, we have to bring them in. Really, yes.
Because they don't know.
They're
the academia.
They are academia.
So we'll give opportunity to all of you here. If you have any questions to ask the panel, they're more than happy to answer you. Yeah, there's a hand up.
So I want to comment about this.
Yeah, please mention your name and your organization.
Okay, my name is Eva. I work for the Finnish University Partnership for International Development. It's a network of 10 Finnish universities who are interested in international development issues. So I want to say something about this academia. In my interaction with researchers who are doing, for instance, development research, one of the complaints they have is that when they do research, NGOs always misinterpret the results of their research, and instead always use the research to implement projects which are more inclined to donor funding. So do NGOs are they really interested in the results of research, or they are interested in pleasing donors?
Well, is there something wrong with using the research for getting money?
If you misinterpret research and twist it so that it can please the donor where you're getting money, then it's wrong. Because if research is going against what you believe in so that you can get money, or you are afraid that the research results are going to hinder your ability to get money, then it's wrong.
So you're thinking NGOs manipulate research results?
Exactly, so that they can get money from donors. And that's how the researchers think about NGOs, that NGOs don't necessarily interpret results of research as they should be. Instead, they always, for instance, want to apply research which is relevant to donor funding, or they misinterpret and manipulate research results to suit donors.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, actually, I wanted to beg the academic among us, I'm sure there are many others, to also educate donors, because donors sometimes, pressure NGOs toward a certain line of work which they don't necessarily want to or think it's feasible, but then they have to do that in order to get some side funding for whatever it is they really feel is urgent and important. So maybe donor education would be a good area so that your research is also seen by them, so that it's not that you have to do things that they think is relevant, So there's a lot of donor-driven activity that, makes you limited in what you also think is right.
This by itself is a big issue, because I think one of the reasons that maybe some of the money that has come to Afghanistan, for example, has not really reached to the people or did what it was supposed to do was because donors brought in programs that they conjured up in their own countries and thought what is best for Afghanistan, based on their own knowledge of what worked for them or what worked in another country that they worked. So it was not really working for Afghanistan, but yet they were not flexible enough to change it, and they forced a lot of NGOs. We never done that, of course, because this is why we're suffering, because this was a totally outside of all donors' programs, because it's never based on a need. When you bring in money and you don't do the research inside the country to find out what do they really need, Afghans never really even had the time to think about what is it that they need. What is it that they want? What kind of government do we want? What kind of economic system do we want? How do we want to live? It was all brought in for us. So this doesn't work. Donors have to stop this. And they really, how do we as an NGO community put enough pressure on donors to never really bring in a program for any countries unless it's asked, if it would have been nice if we knew that the donor countries are there for us to ask for specific things that we need rather than telling us what to do.
As far as FAWE is concerned, when we have the research done by the academia, we bring them in our meeting, the donors, the researchers, and ourselves. And together, we listen to the researchers' findings, and then we built in our projects linked to the research which has been done. And the donors have to comply in what we have decided to work on. That's what we did in FAWE.
Yeah, I think what works probably with FAWE is the fact that you get the opportunity to have the donor to sit at a table with you.
Yes, with us.
But thousands of NGOs have to look online for competitive grant openings, and these are strict kind of guidelines and dictate from the donor community. You wanted to add something?
Just to add that very often what we see as well is the fact that there are very many donor projects not knowing about what they're doing. Yes, exactly. So sometimes there's great overlap and then there's a big gap somewhere else. And again, the processes for funding are so lengthy that by the time the project actually starts, the situation may have changed greatly, and then still it's carved in stone what the project is supposed to do. So, I mean, really, that is a big problem.
Yeah, Hassina.
Thank you for this important topic. I'm Maarit Sinikangas. I come from the University of Jyväskylä. I'm a PhD researcher, doing my research in Tandale area in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And I've noticed that what I would like to have are the good connections and contacts to local NGOs so that I can implement my research results. Because the people, when I interview the local people, slum dwellers there, they always ask me, what is the influence of this research? Why are you doing this? How can we see the results? And I don't have the answer. I can only promise them that I'm going to do my PhD research, I'm going to write the report, I'm going to publish it, but that's it. I can't promise anything more. So in this phase, it would be important for local NGOs to sort of take the results and do something with the results. So that is my wish for NGOs, so that the local people can actually see that it has at least some influence, that they can get their voices out.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I will respond to that.
Okay.
I will give you the executive director of FAWE, which is located in Kenya, but we have a chapter in Tanzania, and she will make sure that the results are going to be used by the Tanzanian chapter. So I'll give it to you, okay?
That's the right answer for you. Yeah. Can we have the microphone here, please? The audience wants to hear.
She's bringing.
My name is Mania Al-Khatib, and I am from NGO Finnish Syrian Friendship Association. My question is very simple, that what kind of possible work could happen during the war in some place of the world, that with NGOs, what they can do, especially about the Omnia experience to provide education. Now, lots of partners say that we don't want to do anything until the war is over. Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, this has to be our last question.
Well, actually, there are some, in terms of our work, there are some partners who have been able to adapt and adjust their work to be able to be useful during times of conflict. For instance, our partners in Jordan and Lebanon have been very helpful to the Syrian refugees who are coming to these countries and have very little really to support. And so they've been doing a lot of both fundraising and getting them material and so forth. Of course, when bombs are dropping, it's harder, but there are other ways that you can, when we had a situation of bombing in Lebanon, for instance, even though they were equipped to do training, leadership training and advocacy, they immediately switched, and the workshop participants that they had started helping to set up shelters for women, because whatever shelters were being used were basically mixed gender, and women wouldn't use them. So they started doing women's shelters. So if you're adaptable and if you're flexible enough, you can find things to do even when bombs are falling. But usually it's subsidiary work for refugees, for this type of situation where you can do the side effects of war.
Yeah.
There is a lady who got the prize, Nobel Prize. It's Lima Bowie from Liberia. She had she set up an NGO which was working with women. So it's really very difficult, but it is doable. She did it. She did. She gave. Her organization was able to help kids have access to education, and also to fight against rape during that period. But it's hiding. Really, it's from one spot to the other. That's why, in fact, she got the prize, the Nobel Prize.
Ms. Jansson, you want to add?
Yes, and definitely what we looked at was training trainers in countries that were safe enough but close enough, working with local people. So again, building bridges and finding ways to take the education where the people are, where it's needed, and build on that. But it's never an easy question, and you have to take it case by case, I think.
I think it takes courage depending on the situation, because in Afghanistan during the Taliban period, for example, when I was in Kabul, there was a lady who was still living in Afghanistan, Mary McMacken, who has lived in Afghanistan since the 70s. She was working in hiding when women were coming in and taking her, and she was doing all of her work in taxis with women, wearing burqas. So you can do that. It's a huge risk. They did take her, the Taliban, I think, imprisoned her once. But it takes courage for individuals to do that, and I don't see a lot of people doing that. But there are always large organizations were in Afghanistan during the Taliban period. In fact, the Scandinavian countries did most of the work. So they were still continuing doing their work, even though the Taliban were doing whatever they were doing, because they kept themselves totally separate.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to thank you very, very much for such a wonderful contribution, and I believe the audience enjoyed themselves. Can we give a clap of hands?